A black Maybach rolled to a stop at the far end of the Savannah waterfront. Serena Ashford stepped out and walked toward the man sitting alone at the edge of a wooden dock. His clothes were streaked with engine grease. A wrench rested against his boot. She stopped, looked down at him, and asked a simple question. "Can I sit with you?" Marcus Cole nodded without looking up. She sat beside him, watching the river. She did not know that the man she had just asked permission to sit beside had quietly wired $22 million into her foundation over the past 5 years. And tonight, everything was about to unravel. The woman who just sat down next to a grease-stained mechanic on a public dock had no idea she was sitting beside the only person keeping her entire empire from collapsing. Have you ever sat next to a stranger, completely unaware that they had already changed your life years ago? 3 weeks earlier, before the dock, before the question, before any of it, Marcus Cole lived a life no one in Savannah thought twice about. He woke at 5:15 in a small clapboard house on the banks of the Wilmington River, left a note on the kitchen table for his daughter, and drove to Thunderbolt Marina, where he ran a one-man boat repair operation out of a rented slip. His hands were good, his prices were fair. His neighbors assumed he was a divorced mechanic who had drifted south from somewhere up the coast, and Marcus never corrected them. What no one in Savannah knew was that Marcus Cole had spent 11 years as one of the most successful fund managers on Wall Street. By 32, he managed portfolios worth north of $4 billion for a boutique firm in Midtown Manhattan. His wife, Catherine, worked as a pediatrician at New York Presbyterian. She had grown up in Savannah, the daughter of a shrimper, and she understood what money could do when it reached the right hands. She kept a brass compass on her desk, a gift from her father, and she used to say that money without direction was just noise. Catherine died in a car accident on the Hutchinson River Parkway when Nora was 3 years old. Marcus buried his wife in Savannah, in the cemetery behind the church where her parents had married. Then he sold every share he owned, closed every account, walked away from every professional relationship he had built, and moved into the house on the Wilmington River. He told no one where he was going. Within 6 months of arriving in Savannah, Marcus established an anonymous philanthropic trust called the Compass Fund. The name came from Catherine's brass compass. The fund operated through a network of legal intermediaries and distributed grants to 14 nonprofit organizations across the country, all focused on children and women in crisis. The largest single recipient was the Ashford Harbor Foundation, a Savannah-based organization that ran shelters for orphan children and survivors of domestic violence. Marcus chose Ashford Harbor because its mission was the thing Catherine had talked about most in the last year of her life. "Every orphan deserves a roof that does not leak," she used to say. He intended to make sure they got one. That afternoon, Marcus picked up Nora from Garrison Elementary at 3 o'clock sharp. She was 8, quiet like her father, with her mother's dark hair and a habit of drawing everything she saw. She climbed into the truck holding a sheet of construction paper. "I drew your boat, Dad," she said, holding up a crayon sketch of a blue hull on green water. Marcus studied it seriously. "You got the waterline right," he said. Nora beamed. They stopped for ice cream on the way home and sat on the dock together, watching a pelican dive into the channel. Marcus kissed her forehead. "Everything I do is for you," he said quietly. "You know that, right?" Nora nodded and went back to her cone. That night, after Nora was asleep, Marcus sat in his dark office and opened a laptop. He pulled up the quarterly financial reports for the Ashford Harbor Foundation, reports he received through his intermediaries as a condition of ongoing funding. Something had been bothering him for months. 3 construction projects funded through Compass Fund grants, shelters for children in rural Georgia, had been listed as in progress for over 2 years, but there were no progress photos, no contractor invoices, no permit filings. The numbers did not add up. He made a note in a private file and closed the laptop. He did not have enough evidence yet, but the feeling in his chest was one he recognized from his years on Wall Street, the feeling that someone, somewhere, was lying about where the money was going. Across Savannah, in a glass-walled office on the top floor of a restored cotton warehouse on River Street, Serena Ashford was building the most important night of her career. The Ashford Harbor Foundation occupied the entire 4th floor of the building, a bright open space filled with case files, donation records, and photographs of children who had passed through the foundation's 6 residential shelters. Serena had founded the organization 8 years earlier when she was 26 years old and had nothing but a business degree from Georgia State and a childhood spent in the foster care system. She had been orphaned at 4, bounced between 7 homes by the time she was 12, and aged out of the system at 18 with a duffel bag and $1,100 in savings. She built Ashford Harbor from that. The press called her the Iron Philanthropist. She did not enjoy the nickname, but she did not deny it either. The foundation's annual fundraiser, the Harbor Gala, was 3 weeks away. It was the single largest source of operating revenue each year, and this year, Serena needed it to raise $20 million to keep all 6 shelters open through the following fiscal year. The logistics alone were enormous. Venue, catering, guest lists, media coordination, and Serena managed most of it herself with the help of a small staff and one person she trusted above all others. Grant Mercer had been the foundation's chief financial officer for 6 years. He was 45, polished, deliberate, and unfailingly calm under pressure. Serena treated him like a brother. He handled every dollar that moved through Ashford Harbor, and she had never once questioned his numbers. That morning, Serena and her team drove to the Thunderbolt Marina waterfront to inspect the outdoor venue she had booked for the gala, a renovated dock pavilion overlooking the Wilmington River. When they arrived, Marcus was on his knees beside a sailboat hull, sanding a patch of fiberglass. Grant stepped out of the car, looked at Marcus, and waved his hand dismissively. "Clear your things out. This area is reserved." Marcus did not respond. He simply gathered his tools and moved to the far end of the dock. Serena glanced at him as she passed, registered nothing, and continued walking. What Serena did not see was what happened later that afternoon, behind the closed door of a rented office suite in downtown Savannah. Grant Mercer sat across from 2 men in expensive suits, representatives of a private investment group he had been working with for 3 years. The arrangement was simple. Grant created fictional construction projects under the foundation's umbrella, diverted Compass Fund grants into shell companies he controlled, and split the proceeds with his partners. Over 36 months, he had siphoned $12 million from the Ashford Harbor Foundation. He knew that a large anonymous donor existed, but he had never been able to identify who was behind the Compass Fund. As long as the money kept coming and the donor stayed invisible, Grant felt safe. That safety cracked 2 days later when Serena received an encrypted email from the Compass Fund's legal representative. The message was brief. It requested a full independent audit of the foundation's finances before the gala. Serena read it twice, frowned, and forwarded it to Grant. She agreed to the audit. She had nothing to hide. Grant read the same email standing at his desk and felt the floor tilt beneath him. 10 days before the gala, Serena held a pre-event reception at the Bohemian Hotel on the riverfront. The guest list included major donors, city officials, and a handful of regional press. It was a cocktail and schmooze affair, designed to build momentum and secure last-minute pledges. The terrace overlooked the water, and the late afternoon light made everything look gilded and important. Marcus had come to the marina that afternoon to finish a hull repair for a client whose boat was docked 2 slips down from the gala venue. He wore a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, work boots, and had grease on his forearms. He did not know the reception was happening until he walked past the terrace entrance on his way back to his truck. Grant saw him first. The CFO was standing near the bar with a group of donors when he spotted Marcus crossing the edge of the event space. He set his drink down and raised his voice loud enough for the entire terrace to hear. "Excuse me. Who let you in here? This is a private event for people who actually contribute to society, not a rest stop for day laborers looking for a handout." A donor in a seersucker jacket laughed openly. 2 women near the railing exchanged a glance and shook their heads. A city councilwoman turned away as if embarrassed for everyone involved. The laughter that followed was not loud, but it was precise, the kind that told a person exactly where they stood in the room's hierarchy, and that the answer was nowhere. Marcus stopped walking. He looked directly at Grant. His expression did not change. There was no anger, no humiliation, no flinch. He held the stare for 3 full seconds, long enough for Grant's smile to waver by a fraction, long enough for something in the air between them to shift, and then he turned and walked away without a word. Not quickly, not with his head down. He walked the way a man walks when he has decided that the people in front of him are not worth the breath it would take to correct them. Serena stood 6 feet from the exchange. She watched Marcus leave with the same detached indifference she might have shown a catering mishap. He was not her concern. He was not anyone's concern. She returned to her conversation without a second thought, but someone on her staff noticed what Serena missed. Joanna Price was 28, a junior accountant who had joined the foundation 4 months earlier. She had been standing near the terrace railing when Grant humiliated Marcus, and something about the way the man responded unsettled her. She had seen people absorb public insults before. They flushed, or stammered, or retreated with their shoulders curled inward. Marcus did none of those things. His stillness was not the stillness of submission. It was the stillness of someone who simply did not need to respond. After Marcus left, Joanna walked past Grant's table to retrieve a binder. Beside it, half covered by a napkin, sat a manila folder stamped in red ink. The label read, Compass Fund Confidential. Joanna glanced around, pulled out her phone, and photographed the cover before anyone noticed. 2 days after the reception, the foundation's financial management system crashed. The server that housed donor records, grant tracking, and gala logistics went offline without warning, and the internal IT team could not restore it. Serena needed those files for the pre-gala compliance report, and without them, the audit the anonymous donor had requested could not proceed on schedule. She drove to the waterfront that afternoon to do a final walkthrough of the gala venue. Marcus was sitting alone on the dock, a laptop open in front of him. She glanced at the screen as she passed and saw rows of financial data, columns of numbers, pivot tables, formulas, not the kind of thing a boat mechanic typically worked with. She stopped. For the first time, she spoke to him directly. "You're always out here. What exactly do you do?" Marcus did not look up. "Fix boats," he said. Before she could press further, one of the gala technicians jogged over in a panic. The AV rigging, the sound system and lighting array that had been installed for the event, had gone dead. The control board was unresponsive, and the technician had already called 2 electricians, neither of whom could come before the weekend. Serena pinched the bridge of her nose. Another problem. Another delay. Marcus stood up without being asked. He walked to the control panel, mounted on the dock piling, opened the housing, studied the wiring for about 30 seconds, then reached in and began reconnecting components with a speed and precision that made the technician stop talking mid-sentence. His fingers moved through the wiring with the certainty of someone who understood systems at a structural level, not just circuits and fuses, but the logic underneath them. 4 minutes later, the entire system powered on. Lights, speakers, monitors, everything. Marcus closed the panel, wiped his hands on his jeans, and sat back down at his laptop as though he had done nothing more interesting than tie his shoe. The technician stared at him. 2 of the gala setup crew had stopped what they were doing to watch. "Where did you learn to do that?" the technician asked. Marcus looked up briefly. "I read a lot." Then he returned to his screen as though nothing had happened. The technician looked at Serena. Serena looked at Marcus. The setup crew looked at each other. No one spoke for a long moment. She did not thank him. She stood there for another minute, watching his hands on the keyboard, the way he scrolled through data with the fluency of someone who had spent years inside spreadsheets, not engine bays. There was something in the way he carried himself that did not match the flannel shirt and the grease stains. It was not arrogance. It was the absence of any need to be recognized. Then she turned and walked to her car. At the door, she glanced back once. Marcus had not moved. That evening, Serena opened her laptop at home and searched for him. She typed Marcus Cole Savannah into Google and found nothing. No LinkedIn profile, no social media accounts, no news articles, no business registrations. The man did not exist on the internet. For someone in the digital age, that kind of absence was not accidental. It was deliberate, and it made Serena more curious than anything Grant had ever shown her in a financial report. Meanwhile, inside the Foundation's offices, Grant summoned Joanna to his corner office and closed the door. He did not sit down. "I understand you've been asking questions about the Compass Fund," he said. His voice was level, almost friendly. "That account is above your clearance level. I'd recommend focusing on the work you were hired to do." Joanna